Hold the Line with Mike Solon is brought to you by the Seattle Police Officers Guild, Seattle's public safety voice.
Hey, welcome back to Hold the Line with Mike Solon. Well, it's official. The OPA Director, Gino Turkey Betts, has resigned, effective December. We want to thank Gino for his time. No, not really, because it's been an absolute disaster. I can tell you that being under, 5 OPA directors that I can recall in my tenure in terms of being a Seattle police employee, we've seen a huge fluctuation in people that have occupied that position. And I want to be clear for the audience, SPOG fully supports the mission of OPA. In fact, I made a statement a few days ago when the news broke that Gino Turkey Betts had resigned. I basically said SPOG fully supports the mission of OPA and is looking forward to bias-free leadership in the OPA. What that means is we support OPA's mission. We support accountability, but it has to be reasonable accountability. And this former director, effective mid-December, was not reasonable at all. In fact, it came across as almost activist-like. And I can tell you from my own personal experience sitting in Loudermill meetings with the chief, if you don't know what a Loudermill process is, it's basically a U.S. Supreme Court right for public safety employees to face their final disciplinarian. I believe it's a 1968-ish case involving a school teacher in Ohio, and that made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they basically said what I just told you, is that they had the right to face their final disciplinarian and state their case. Well, in those experiences with these Loudermill hearings, it was an absolute battle with him, and his unprofessional demeanor was stunning to me. I tried to hit it off with him properly when he first started 2 years ago, tried to develop some kind of rapport, basically just met with a brick wall. It's quite clear that this was going to be a different type of person in terms of a fight on every issue. And that turned out to be absolutely true. And at the end of the day, his behavior was so poor that it ultimately was his demise. And let me break it down as to why. So why did he resign? Why did Gino Turkey Betts resign? And by the way, I want to say, before I go any further, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I love this holiday. It's my favorite. I hope it's yours. It's a place when family can get together and just enjoy life and experience one another and the love we all have for each other. So that's why it's special to me. But it's also special to be thankful for things. And I'm not trying to be a smart ass or flippant, but trying to be tongue-in-cheek here with nicknaming Gino the Turkey, because I believe that he deserves at least some public shaming with his behavior and his conduct. I mean, it's my understanding that he signed a 4-year deal in 22, and to be dismissed 2 years into that is quite telling. He didn't resign. He was basically forced out. You don't leave, you take your family across the country from Chicago to come here and then decide to leave after 2 years under all this cloud of scrutiny. And I think just utter disregard for reasonableness is to the reason why I think the executive forced Gino to resign. And that's where I'm going to leave it at that. So they obviously gave him a soft landing pad, meaning Gino, a soft landing pad to find other employment. And the public comments by the city's official stance on this in their press release, we'll put it in the description, basically is reflective of acknowledging that Gino's resigned and then welcoming the new OPA director. And I can tell you the new OPA director, Bonnie, she's great. Bonnie Glenn, I've already had good relations with her since she became one of the deputy directors in OPA several months ago. And then I could kind of tell that things were amiss and the city was starting to be really concerned about Gino's conduct. And the writing was on the wall. Gino faced reports of stonewalling, if not slowing down, if you will, major SPD investigations with higher chains of command. I mean, that's a serious allegation, one that merits intense scrutiny, and I have no doubt that the OIG will conduct a thorough investigation and conclude appropriately. But that's major misconduct if the director is not doing their due diligence to investigate potential policy violations by anybody, whether it's a police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, or chief. That's the bottom line. And the police accountability for a reason, well, then do the job. Also, the employees within OPA, the civilian and sworn staff, were up in arms about just his conduct. He was absolutely unreasonable, to the point where there were several OPA employee whistleblower complaints about his misconduct, workplace misconduct, and that did not go unnoticed with City Hall. Let me tell you that. It was stunning development regards to people having the courage, and I applaud them for becoming whistleblowers and making these complaints. And we'll eventually get to the meat of those complaints when they get released, and looking forward to having another follow-up in this investigation. Another piece of this is obviously, and I haven't addressed this yet on this podcast, and I'm not trying to skirt this issue, but it's the Dan Audrer, the former vice president of this union, my friend. He and I were on a phone call remarking on the unfortunate and catastrophic and traumatic death of a community member at the hands of an on-duty police officer. Complete accident. And you got to think about, it's a private conversation he and I were having about union matters related to a member that unfortunately was involved in this tragic incident. And you think that the conversation's private because you're discussing the current events on that tragic call, what to expect, and then we're remarking on how lawyers are going to bargain over the value of a community member's death. Everything is just tragic. And I think at the end of the day, that video got legs. Not sure how it was discovered. We have some understanding and some documentation that it was a PDR found of this footage, but I'll break this whole process down in another podcast once this process, in terms of the arbitration process, the appeal process of Dan's job, is mitigated. Right now, I'm not going to get too much into the weeds because I want to protect the process. I don't want to say things that might jeopardize Dan's chances, and I'm obviously going to have to testify to this. And I know that there's going to be upcoming litigation on this whole case, as tragic as it is. But you have to understand that this was very impactful to the union, and I think it was an attempt to defang, delegitimize SPOG, knock us down, if not cancel us. And definitely the scrutiny was palpable. And Gino's behavior with this incident was stunningly unprofessional, shockingly devoid of reason, and I think callous. This guy put himself through media training, I believe, to make himself a household name, make OPA a household name, where I've seen the videos, and we'll put them into circulation once I do a final podcast on this whole tragic incident in depth detail after the arbitration case. But he put himself through media training before he even finalized his investigation into Dan Audrer, before he had his recommended discipline that he was going to put into his director's certification memo, which is the final document to give to the final disciplinarian who's the chief of police. He did all of this, preparing to remark on Dan's termination. And then in the final DCM piece, he initially had a judgment of, yes, sustained findings for professionalism policy violation. But the second allegation against Dan on the bias component, he documented in his DCM that there was no nexus that he could find that Dan was biased to the community member. But then he consults with an attorney And then lo and behold, several days later, backdating, signing the same document, he just changed allegation 2 on bias to now a sustained bias complaint. I mean, just put yourselves in a police officer's shoes. You imagine signing an official document where we go backwards on the same date you initially said X, but then several days later you say Y with no reasonable explanation as to why you changed your mind. So all of these things surrounding this case, and then the curious media, what I think are potential leaks of confidential investigative information given to particular media outlet. Perhaps it came from Gino. I've seen some documentation that may prove that that is true. But if you look at the nexus of the timing of this case relative to Mike Carter and his articles contained in the Seattle Times, you may conclude that there could be a nexus there. That's my opinion. I have no doubt that this will get mitigated in litigation and in the arbitration process. But here we are. I'll just quote directly with some of the quotes of Gino Turkey's Betts' behavior. Quote, Betts manages with fear and intimidation and has created a toxic work environment. OPA employees respect the chain of command and have been trying to fix this internally for over a year and a half. Betts knows what he is doing is wrong because he only lashes out at non-union employees who he knows cannot fight back for being fired. In essence, he was acting like a bully. And I can tell you, based upon my experience, his conduct in those Laudermill hearings, he was acting like a bully, slouching in his chair, feet spread across, completely dismissive of an officer's explanation in terms of explaining their actions to the chief. I've never seen that kind of conduct before. And it's unfortunate because SPOG fully supports OPA as long as it's reasonable accountability. What's happened in Seattle over the course of the past several years from, I would say, 2020 to present day, I believe OPA has been weaponized by the activist class, i.e. Gino, acting in a manner that's detrimental to public safety with an extreme bias against police officers that, in my view, were absolutely unreasonable and uncalled for. And that led to his dismissal. So I applaud, the mayor doing due diligence, taking this matter seriously, seeing how OPA needed change, immediate change, for, I think, the confidence that the accountability system is fair and just, and for police officers to believe so, and for the community as well. So the two go hand in hand. You have to have police to believe in the accountability system is fair and just, and then the community has to believe that that is the same deal. If you don't have one or the other, if you don't have them both, then it collapses, and it definitely collapsed under Gino Turkey Betts. So it's big news for the accountability conversation. It's big news for this community, big news for public safety, and huge news for police officers to take a breath of fresh air that this individual is no longer there. And we look forward to Bonnie Glenn and her leadership and our continued good relationship we have with her. We will work in tandem with her to a fair and robust accountability system that the community trusts and the police believe in, that's fair and just. Does it jeopardize the reputation of OPA? I think, under Andrew Meyerberg, there was a 70% drop in discipline appeals from this union with his potential discipline recommendations to the chief. And ultimately, we either appeal of final disciplinarian, which is the chief's decision based upon the recommendation of the OPA director. But remember that if the chief of police disagrees with the civilian-led OPA director, their opinion on recommended discipline for said officer of said policy violations, then that chief of police has to author a letter of explanation to the Seattle City Council. So it's a tough bar to overcome publicly and optically if you're the chief of police. So you have to be sound in your, I believe, stance on overruling a civilian-led OPA director. Tough politically. So, I think OPA is going to be okay under Bonnie's leadership. I'm thankful that the city recognized the seriousness that OPA had found itself in with the conduct of this past director and made appropriate changes, which I applaud. So good on the city for doing that. And that transitions to the public safety situation here in Seattle. We've lost, 700 officers in 4 years. I've been remarking that on a lot of media interviews. Currently, we have about 854 total available deployable. That means sworn personnel that are SPOG members that can go to the street and conduct investigations on public safety matters. That's a stunning stat. We should be 1,400 strong. We're about 854. But the good news is that, hey, look at when we ratify a fair and competitive labor contract, it's opened the floodgates for people to apply for the Seattle Police Department. I applaud them. And you're now seeing the shifting of winds, meaning the political winds of public safety and the recognition that we have to enforce law here, get back to basics, because we're losing the streets. If not, they're already lost. So given the staffing, serious safety constraints we have, we're seeing now an uptick in applications to the police department, which is, to me, a huge positive development. So we're predicting that we're going to have more hires than separations this year, but it's not great. So we're predicting year-to-date separations so far. At the current rate, we're projected to have 84 separations. Currently, we have 74. So potentially before the end of the year, which we got another month left, we could see 10 more, separations. But the good news is that we're going to have well over new hires than separations so far. And I'm confident that that's going to happen. I'm happy it's going to happen. We have to get more police officers, but it has to be measured. It has to be quality human beings to do this difficult job. So I can tell you we're going to support that mission. We're going to continue to stand up for reasonableness, fight injustice, and really just call balls and strikes. And very thankful that Gino Turkey Betts is gone. And we're going to have some sense of normalcy back in OPA for the betterment of the city, for the betterment of public safety, for the betterment of police officers, and I think an overall confidence that the employees that are Seattle police officers, and particularly the ones that SPOG represents, believe that the accountability system is sound. And I think this move illustrates that positive development, so we welcome it. So in the meantime, look forward to me addressing the termination of Dan Otterer, my impact on that, how they came after me for sure, how they try to discredit this union, discredit me, but this isn't about me. This is about the police officers that we represent. This is about the accountability system. We're seeing strong winds of political change that are warming to the core of what is reasonableness. And I'm excited. And I can tell you, if it doesn't materialize in something positive, then you betcha we're going to go hard in the paint again. We're the only entity that stands and fights for, that I think, do an effective job for police officers in this city. And we've been doing it for a long time, particularly in these past 4 years. So if you've got somebody that wants to be a Seattle police officer, we welcome you. You be part of this union, join the cause, fight for justice, fight for the community, put bad people in jail, and take pride in this profession because it is a prideful profession. I love it. I thank the city for taking a chance on me. I'm humbled and honored to be in this position. And we as SPOG thoroughly enjoy standing in the breach and calling out injustice right in front of our eyes. So stay tuned for future podcasts. Please like and subscribe. Share this with your friends and family. Public safety, the winds have shifted. and there's sunlight coming through the dark clouds. See you next time, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.